The tragic reality has emerged with Pastor Franklin Graham's wife's revelation, putting an end to much speculation regarding his family life. As examples of unwavering faith and perseverance, the Grahams have long been an inspiration to millions. Will this challenge put them to the test, though? What did she expose to the world? Let's find out by diving into the facts. The year 1952 marked the beginning of Franklin Graham's existence in Asheville, North Carolina. He was born to Billy and Ruth Bell Graham as the fourth of their 5 children. In the peaceful and picturesque Appalachian Mountains, the family resided in a rustic log cabin. The son of the renowned evangelist Billy Graham, Franklin Graham, did not always carry on his father's work. Indeed, he endured a challenging and defiant phase during his youth. Franklin, in contrast to his father, had no interest in following in his footsteps as a prominent religious figure or preacher. Sometimes, though he was the son of a revered evangelist, he wasn't always the model son and sometimes called himself a naughty lad. Franklin had it tough growing up with a famous father. Billy Graham often spent extended periods of time away from home as a result of his preaching missions. He was well known for more than simply his preaching. He addressed enormous audiences all around the globe and even counseled presidents of the United States. Franklin and his siblings had to deal with the challenges that came with having to share their father with the world. If Franklin were to become a preacher, he was afraid people would always draw comparisons to his father, an anxiety he had previously acknowledged. Embracing a spiritual path at first was inhibited by the prospect of being evaluated or found wanting as Billy Graham's son. Franklin, on the other hand, went his own way for a long time, frequently exhibiting behavior that went against the wishes of his father and family. Franklin had an adventurous spirit and a love of the outdoors from an early age, engaging in pursuits like fishing and hunting. Many people thought his spirited personality and playful mischief were inherited traits from his mother, Ruth. His mom, Ruth, had a reputation for being a bit of a prankster and was not hesitant to be inventive when disciplining her kids. One day, Franklin's mom tried to get him up early so he could go to school, and the incident stuck with him. Franklin began to lock his door in an effort to evade her alarm calls in the morning. To ensure he woke up on time, Ruth resorted to hiding fireworks beneath his door. They turned it into a little game which highlighted the ways in which his mother's creativity and sense of humor shaped him. Infidelity became more of an issue for Franklin as he matured. In defiance of convention, he persisted. What he would later refer to as the fast life began for him. A few examples of this behavior are smoking, drinking, and fighting. He went as far as to experiment with marijuana. As the son of a minister, I found this extremely disturbing. Why did he feel compelled to do this? His father was a famous preacher, therefore his actions caused great concern to his family. The expectation was that sending Franklin to the prestigious Christian boarding school Stony Brook on Long Island, New York would help him concentrate and calm down. But he had a hard time adjusting to the school's norms and discipline, so he left. You won't believe what happened next. His problems persisted beyond that point. He continued his downward spiral after graduating from Stony Brook by enrolling in LeTourneau College in Longview, Texas. Nevertheless, he was also unsuccessful there. A major rule breach at the time, Franklin's decision to let a female classmate out past curfew, led to her expulsion. Because of his disobedience and rebellious behavior, he had a hard time fitting in at these prestigious schools, and he avoided the attention and scrutiny that came with being the son of Billy Graham. Franklin had a hard time finding his niche, even though he had support from his family. There was a lot of recklessness and poor decision-making in his youth that may have let his family down. Montreat Anderson College, now known as Montreat College, granted Franklin Graham an associate degree in 1974. A watershed moment in his life occurred in that very year. He says he had a new birth, a profound inside transformation that redirected his life's trajectory and strengthened his faith. In 1974, it all started during a vacation to Switzerland. While he was away, his father, Billy Graham, had a serious conversation with him regarding his future plans. Billy could tell his kid was having a hard time and needed to make a decision about his future. He made eye contact with Franklin and told him that he and Franklin's mom sensed a power struggle over Franklin's life's trajectory and that Franklin would have to make a decision soon. For Franklin, they were devastating remarks. They lingered in his mind, prompting him to reflect on his future. Franklin was on the road around Europe at the time, and he frequently carried a Scotch bottle. The concept of making a change in his life was foreign to him, and he was living a life devoid of self-control. But the words of his father lingered in his memory, resonating even as he continued to wander. Then a decisive event transpired. Franklin spent a lonely night in a Jerusalem hotel, giving himself plenty of time to reflect. His age was 22, and he remained in his room rather than his usual haunt, the bar. He then began to read the Bible. He started with John's Gospel, which is a New Testament book that narrates the life and teachings of Jesus. Reading along, he reached chapter 3, where Jesus teaches Nicodemus that in order to join God's kingdom, he must be born again. Franklin saw more than just a Nicodemus tale here. Now he finally got it. This message was specifically addressed to him. Franklin Graham came to the realization that in order to truly commit to his faith and have a new beginning, he needed to be reborn. In his 1995 autobiography, Rebel with a Cause, Finally Comfortable Being Graham, he recounted this profound epiphany. Things started to shift for Franklin after that night. Instead of continuing down the road of disobedience, he decided to start over, focusing on becoming a better Christian and carrying on his father's work. For Franklin, this was the turning point that set him on the path to leadership and preaching. But he needed more out of life and spent one night in a hotel room with a Bible. Franklin Graham received his BA from Appalachian State University in 1978. He achieved a notable milestone in this regard. However, around the same time, another formative event occurred that would influence his life going forward. Franklin met Bob Pierce, the Christian organization that helps those in need all around the world, when he was in his early 20s. Samaritan's Purse was founded by Pierce. A 6-week mission trip to Asia was extended to Franklin by Pierce. Franklin would never be the same after this adventure. Franklin witnessed firsthand the plight of the world's poorest people during this mission tour. War, starvation, illness, poverty, and natural catastrophes were all things he seen firsthand. He was profoundly affected by these events. It became clear to Franklin that he had a mission in life to aid those going through tough times. The year 1978 was when Franklin became a member of Samaritan's Purse's board. Bob Pierce died in 1979. Hardly a year after that, Franklin succeeded Pierce as president of Samaritan's Purse following his passing. Franklin was prepared to take the lead despite the magnitude of the task. His efforts to expand the organization's reach and aid those in crisis have continued since then. For 45 years, Franklin oversaw the work of Samaritan's Purse, an organization that provides aid to those in need. The group has handled a number of big emergencies. They include conflicts, calamities, and epidemics. For instance, hurricanes, wildfires, and earthquakes are just a few examples of the natural catastrophes that Samaritan's Purse has helped those impacted by, as well as those impacted by wars in Gaza and Israel, the continuing crisis in Ukraine, and the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. Millions of lives have been touched by Franklin's efforts, providing assistance in the form of medical treatment, food, housing, and hope to those who are experiencing extremely trying circumstances. Franklin Graham has devoted his life to helping people, particularly those in the most difficult and hopeless circumstances, via his work with Samaritan's Purse. The Grace Community Church in Tempe, Arizona, officially ordained Franklin Graham in 1982, giving him the power to preach. No particular denomination is represented here. It is not affiliated with any particular Christian denomination, but it does center on Christian principles. Being ordained was a watershed moment in Franklin's life. It launched his career as a preacher and laid the groundwork for his subsequent ministry endeavors. Franklin held his inaugural evangelistic gathering in 1989. His father had founded the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, and this was his first outreach with the ministry, so it was a watershed moment. Ever since then, Franklin has spearheaded many more gatherings of a similar kind all around the globe. Crusades and festivals are common names for these international gatherings that share the good news of Jesus Christ with people all over the world. Franklin took on a larger position in his father's group as he became more interested. He became the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association's vice president in 1995. Since his father, Billy Graham, was in his early 80s and suffering from Parkinson's disease, it became increasingly difficult for him to personally oversee the organization at that time. The subject of Billy's successor to the ministry arose in the wake of his illness. At first, many were skeptical that Franklin was the man for the position because of his troubled upbringing and the legacy of his father. But as time went on, Franklin proved his mettle and earned the admiration and confidence of many. Benjamin Franklin was formally appointed as the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association's chief executive officer in the year 2000. In this new position, he would be primarily responsible for overseeing his father's ministry and continuing Billy Graham's work of spreading the gospel all over the globe. Franklin eagerly took on this responsibility, carrying on his father's work even now. Franklin has achieved great success as both a preacher and an author. His ideals and life experiences are reflected in his many books. His autobiography, Rebel with a Cause, Finally Comfortable Being Graham, 1995, tells his personal story, including his struggles and how he came to embrace his faith. Other popular books by him include Operation Christmas Child, A Story of Simple Gifts, 2013, which tells the story of the gift-giving project he leads for children in need, The Name 2002, which focuses on the power and meaning of Jesus' name, and Rebel with a Cause. A Story of Simple Gifts, 2010, which tells the story of his life. Jane Austen Cunningham Graham, Franklin's wife, has been an unwavering rock throughout his life. Throughout Franklin's life and career, Jane has been an unsung hero. Provides stability and encouragement when he has assumed significant ministry duties. In 1974, the year of their marriage, the narrative of Franklin and Jane began. While Jane was a summer camper in Smithfield, North Carolina, she went to see the Graham family in their mountain town of Montreat. Franklin and his family were welcomed by Jane during this visit. Franklin proposed to drive Jane to church one Sunday, and their romance began from that point on. Jane began to get to know the Graham family at this time, and she met Ruth Bell Graham, who was Franklin's mother. Because of their common beliefs and ideals, Franklin and Jane became fast friends and remained so for the rest of their lives. Jane Austen Graham Lynch, better known as Sissy, is one of 4 children born to Franklin and Jane William Franklin Graham IV, Roy Austen Graham, Edward Bell Graham, and Jane. The happy couple still resides in the peaceful mountain town of Boone, North Carolina, where they brought up their children. They have been able to devote themselves to family life in Boone, where they have found a tranquil setting away from the limelight. Jane has avoided the spotlight for the most part, in contrast to Franklin, who is a prominent person because to his roles as head of Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. Her whole life has been around providing a secure, caring environment for their children to grow up in. Jane has been an indispensable family member due to Franklin's frequent travel for work. She has been instrumental in instilling strong moral principles and a strong spiritual foundation in their children. Although Jane's involvement with the Samaritan's Purse community is more subtle, she is nonetheless very much a part of it. Supporting the organization's workforce, particularly those whose husbands are required to travel regularly for business, is something she is deeply passionate about. Having a loved one who is always on the go is tough, and Jane has been there, and she uses her story to help others who are going through the same thing. Employees and their families are able to overcome physical distance with the help of this program. Jane has been there for Franklin through thick and thin in his ministry, providing stability for their loved ones and words of support. Famous Christian leader Franklin Graham is also known for his strong views on difficult topics. People from all walks of life have voiced their opinions on his words during his career. Franklin Graham's political beliefs have also been a major cause of dispute. His support for former U.S. President Donald Trump has been outspoken. Some Christian leaders and organizations have taken offense to his support for this cause. An editorial condemning Trump was published in Christianity Today, a publication that was founded by his father, Billy Graham. This was a prominent incident. According to the editorial, Trump's moral fiber is so low that he has no business being president. This criticism upset Franklin Graham to his core. He took offense that a magazine bearing his father's name would criticize a politician he had backed. Franklin responded to the column by defending Trump on social media and lamenting the state of Christianity in the modern world. He told his audience that he had kept quiet about his father's 2016 election vote. But he felt compelled to clarify in light of the magazine piece that his father was aware Trump supported and believed in him. The public has had conflicting reactions to Franklin Graham's remarks and deeds. His attitude on Trump and his support for the president are seen by some as a continuation of his father's legacy, and they respect it. There are many who think he shouldn't be a religious leader getting involved in politics because it will just serve to further alienate Christians and take their attention away from Jesus' central message. Unexpectedly, Aram Shavigian, uncle of the renowned preacher Billy Graham, reacted sarcastically to his uncle Franklin Graham post. On a special day in 2016, he remembered his grandfather Billy Graham triumphed over hydrocephalus and Parkinson's disease. He made an indelible impression on his loved ones that day when he finally got out of bed after a year of resting, drove himself to the polling place, and cast his ballot. Franklin was the target of this remark, which cast doubt on his claims regarding their grandfather's voting record and other political activities. A schism opened up in the Graham household as a result of this Twitter argument. Aram's remark and a reader's inquiry to Franklin inquiring about whether his nephew was accusing him of being dishonest revealed profound differences. A deeper schism has been widening among the evangelical community in recent years, and these arguments inside families are just a small part of it. Jerusha Duford and Aram Shavigian are speaking out against their uncle Franklin Graham's support for Trump more and more. Both siblings have expressed themselves through literature, and Jerusha in particular has a reputation for being quite vocal. Because their mother, Gigi Graham Shavigian, is the eldest daughter of Billy Graham, they have a unique vantage point rooted in their lineage and the work of their grandpa. The inspirational life of their grandfather, who started his ministry in the breathtaking North Carolina mountains close to Asheville, has been chronicled in books written by both Aram and Jerusha. In many of their works, they return to Billy Graham's original message and ideals. Even though Franklin Graham has been the target of criticism from many quarters, the fact that members of his own family are now raising these issues lends credence to their claims. That there are other factors at play than divergent viewpoints is clear. The fundamental principles and beliefs that shape Billy Graham's ministry are challenged in this. Especially in light of Trump's administration, this family feud reveals a deeper division within the evangelical community regarding its future and its place in politics. In addition to his contentious statements, Franklin Graham has recently dealt with significant health issues. His diagnosis of constrictive pericarditis was made in 2021. This condition manifests itself when the normally elastic heart lining becomes rigid and irritated. The heart may feel constricted and have difficulty pumping blood when this occurs. The news was relayed by Pastor Franklin Graham's family and wife, and it broke the hearts of millions. In November of that year, Franklin underwent cardiac surgery due to this ailment. Over the past 2 decades, he has presided over the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, despite being 72 years old. Additionally, the BGEA is transitioning its leadership to the Graham family's next generation. Will Graham, the eldest son of Franklin, is a key figure in the group. He resides in the North Carolina hamlet of Swannanoa, which is close to Asheville. Will oversees the Billy Graham Training Center at the Cove, situated just east of Asheville, and serves as vice chairman of BGEA. Anyone interested in learning more about Christianity or receiving ministry training can find what they need at this center. The current head of BGEA, Will Graham, would succeed Franklin Graham in the event of his untimely demise. In preparation for that possible post, he is juggling a lot of duties. Will is strikingly similar to his grandpa. Not just in appearance, but also in behavior and method of delivery of sermons. To spread his message, he travels and keeps a full preaching schedule. An ordained minister is also Will. He was a preacher for 6 years in Raleigh, NC before taking on his current positions. Being a pastor has given him the ability to empathize with others and comprehend their struggles. Will Graham continues in the family tradition of preaching the gospel and encouraging others to put their faith in Jesus Christ. The Graham family and the companies they head are undergoing a huge transformation as they pass the torch to the next generation. Will and the rest of the family's support is crucial while Franklin deals with his health issues. With the support of dedicated family members like Will, the BGEE can rest assured that their mission will be carried out for many years to come, building on their rich heritage of evangelism.